I know a lot of those.
And so
nobody in Boca, but
nobody in Boca.
Other places.
We have the highest rate of takers here of doing treatments than most places. Beverly Hills, New York, and Boca Raton, in South Florida.
That's absolutely true. You go to the Midwest or something, and very few people.
Well, so U.S.-wise, considerers are a large group of potential women who would do it.
If the price came down?
You see, I always knew Becky was the smartest. It's absolutely true. So my point was getting at was the companies try to market to certain segments of the population in an attempt to attract new users.
Right.
And I sit on every medical advisory board for all these companies. And I'm one of the lone people that get up and say, listen, you can market all you want. The main reason less than 10% of considerers have done neurotoxins, Botox, for instance, is because they can't afford it.
Less than 10% of the
Less
considerers.
than 10% of considerers in the entire U.S. Those that say, I'd like to do Botox, I would definitely do it if.
But I also hear a lot of people say they're afraid of needles, but I think if they could afford it, they might not be afraid of needles anymore.
Those are all secondary reasons.
Okay.
The fear of going to a doctor's office.
Yeah.
That's why, frankly, med spas have become so popular. The fear of needles, the fear of bruising, the fear of looking weird. Those are all great reasons why people don't do treatments. But the number one reason, in my opinion, and it's proven to be true, is they can't afford it. You got a mother with 3 kids, and both mom and dad are working. Injectables are not a high priority.
Right.
And I understand that. So back to the new drug. The new drug is the closest medically of all the other drugs. As I said, they all have their own personalities.
Oh, even more so than Xeomin and...
much closer. So what happens is the personality of these drugs relate to their manufacturing. They all have a similar effect once they're in the body, but they're not identical.
Yeah.
And I always say this, is manufacturing relates to performance. So once you inject them or once you mix them or reconstitute them, they come in a freeze-dried typical container, and then you have to mix it with saline. It changes a little bit.
Okay.
And the 2 that have been here other than Botox were good, but they're structurally a bit different.
Okay.
The new one is structurally
So the
identical.
new one that costs less is structurally closer to Botox.
Right. So
this is very interesting.
So I did the FDA studies, as I did for all the other toxins. And we were very impressed, but we only treated the frown lines. Some people call 11s, in between the brows to get rid of the vertical frown lines. It performed very well. I mean, and most of us centers in the U.S., and there were several, and I was one of them, one of the only ones. I think I may have been the only in South Florida. We said this works really well, and I've done all of them, and I've done even ones
that... And I know everybody that's listening and watching is wanting to know how much less does it cost than regular Botox?
So the hope is that by making the product slightly less expensive to the physician, which is not panned out yet, although because when they first came out as a publicly traded company, it was going to be the identical price for Botox.
Okay.
So they realized the competitive edge here is going to be pricing.
Absolutely. People are waiting for that.
And so I think, if anything, this competitor that works as well will stabilize prices. What's happened is most of the companies raise their price every year.
Oh, okay.
So you say, and when you own the neurotoxin industry, you can name your price because you have to buy it. So I think this will stabilize prices. The drug works the same. I think most injectors. I was on a webcast last night with another colleague here, a dermatologist and good friend in Delray Beach. I think most injectors, whether you're a nurse injector or you're a physician injector, probably charge the same.
Who can inject in the state of Florida? A nurse practitioner?
Nurse practitioner, physicians, PAs.
Okay, just those 3.
Now,
okay.
Physicians is any physician, and dentists.
Dentists too, yeah,
Yes.
I knew that.
So, a lot
Psychiatrists?
Well,
technically?
I think we may have talked about this once before. So I can say this, even though it's completely off-label, Botox will be approved for major depression.
I had heard that.
So,
okay.
So this is, I can tell, this is going to become a neurotoxin show.
Does it work?
We could spend an hour talking about neurotoxin. So I actually was asked.
Does it work? I mean, do they inject it in the face for depression?
Yes.
Oh, boy. So that means you could get it covered by your insurance.
Well, it's migraine headaches too. So people stretch that
Right.
into, I have migraine headaches and I need to get my Botox injections. I actually trained psychiatrists when they first made. So what you do is you do these pivotal trials before anything goes through the FDA. It's called proof of concept. You have to prove that the concept even has legs.
Right.
So there was a dermatologist who was married to a psychiatrist, and the dermatologist actually realized that her patients seemed to be happier. Now, the typical argument is, I look better.
Who wouldn't be happier when you
I
get
look
Botox?
better, I'm happier.
I'm always happy.
So that was the leading excuse for why people seem to be happier.
Yeah.
Turns out that that's not the whole story. And
that is very interesting.
And one of the things, and you may even relate to this, I see people in my practice all the time. They say, you know what, I haven't even looked in the mirror. I know I'm ready for Botox. They just know it.
I'm ready for a pick-me-up.
Right.
But I didn't think about it. It could be psychological as well as physical.
And it is.
Wow.
So they did the first really proof of concept. They did it against electroconvulsive therapy, which is the oldest form of treatment for depression, which is barbaric, but the most effective. But most people don't go through ECT.
What is it?
Electroconvulsive therapy, where they actually shock you out of depression, rather than taking
I'd rather do
Prozac
Botox.
or drugs or pills. So it was resoundingly a dramatic improvement over ECT.
Have you noticed in your patients that they get happier?
Yes, I have.
After
Now,
Botox?
just like everything in medicine,
Yeah.
everything doesn't affect everyone the same way.
Right.
And that's why, even back to neurotoxins, some patients do better with one than another. They do.
No, I've
They
heard
just
that.
do.
Yeah.
We're biologic variants. If blood pressure medication works for you, I could take the same one, and it may not do a thing. So we know that. We know that's a real issue. So the biologic variant is something that's very real. Same thing with depression. But so they're going through the phase 2 and eventually phase 3 clinical trials for major depression. But what I find so interesting is, despite the fact it probably will be approved for major depression, I think it'll be incredibly useful for minor depression. I mean, think how many people are just
Borderline.
subtly depressed. They're not depressed all the time,
Right.
but it doesn't take them much to turn them into being not so happy.
Right.
If the drug works, which it seems to work, and as I said, I was asked by the pharmaceutical company that I work with, and I work with most of them, but that one that owns Botox, if I could train psychiatrists how to inject, because they haven't injected since they started practice. So you ask where you treat it?
Yeah.
You treat it actually in the
Right where you
glabella
need
area.
it.
Just where most of the studies and most of the new toxins, like this new one,
Are done there.
are studied. So it works. I train them.
Okay.
It's not very difficult.
That's where they do it for depression and for migraines?
It's one of the areas for migraines.
Okay.
So very sophisticated neurologists treat definite trigger points all over the head and scalp and the neck. And most of the people who treat just the frown line area, patients will tell you that their headaches may not be completely gone, but they're much better.
Much better.
Less severe, less frequent. So it's a fascinating field. The new drug, it performed in the FDA trials, the phase 3 registration trial for the FDA that I work with, very well.
Okay.
And then it got FDA approved several months back. Now, I've had a few years of experience with it because the trials take a long time to get to the FDA and then approval and then to market. And so now we use it in the real world. And it works. It works very well. But it has its own personality. It definitely has...
How does it differ from Botox?
We're not exactly sure. I have my own theory, and I'm working on a study with a colleague of mine from Boston. I think... So everybody can relate to the fact that if you've had Botox or Dysport seems to spread a little more. What we call the field of effect is a little larger. Botox was always felt to be the gold standard, which I believe in many ways it still is, because the field of effect was limited. It was very precise. I think this drug, the field of effect, is even tighter. It's even more precise. Now, that's great in areas like this where you typically denervate that area, you immobilize that area, you relax those muscles completely. The forehead's a different area, because most of the time you go very light on the forehead for a lot of reasons. One, you don't want to drop the eyebrows.
Right.
And two,
Seen that.
most people don't need that much. But in people with really active foreheads, I'm finding in some of those patients, I need to do a few more injection points. Doesn't make a major difference. But I have found, again, now treating several hundred patients with the new drug, that it has its own personality that I've figured out, and you use it a little differently. Like I will use Dysport differently in patients,
Right.
like I will use Xeomin different in patients. And
So
because
you
it's,
really have to go to an experienced doctor.
well,
if
because
you,
everybody assumes, since this was the closest thing to Botox from a structural molecule,
That it would behave
should
the
be
same.
identical. But it's not. And I always rely on the fact, and my experience is that manufacturing dictates performance. And they, once they're mixed, they act sometimes very differently. Now, this one is not very different. It's the closest of all of them by far. But I think in some patients, if you treat just here, it's the same. If you treat even the crow's feet, it's about the same.
so
The forehead
and
is
it
a
will
little
be
different.
a little less expensive than Botox.
We'll see. With time,
Okay.
you know, there's always these, when the product first gets released after an FDA approval, there's incentives to patients. So
Right.
now patients can get,
Now's the time to get.
well, and the companies do it.
Right.
So the companies incentivize the patients,
Right.
and we'll see
Once
if
you
that
try it.
keeps going. Secondly, the competitors do the same thing. They go, okay, my competitor's giving incentives, we're going
I
to.
gotta do it.
That's why I believe we'll start to stabilize in the prices,
Yeah.
and more people will be able to do it. So
It'll become
it's-
available to
and
more
there may
people.
be incentives going on now for a long time for most of the companies that make these products to get people to use it,
To try 'em.
because they've now realized that price becomes the limiting factor for a lot of people.
No, it is. I mean, if the price just dropped a little bit, I think a lot
I think
more
more
people.
people,
Yeah.
the considerers would take it.
Okay, I want to get onto these other topics because we're running out of time here. You talked about under eye. When you were on here a couple of years ago, you talked about a new product, and I don't know what happened to that. Was it an injectable to dissolve bags under the eyes? Or
Well-
no, it was a cream, right?
No, it's an injectable.
Okay.
So we talked about something that's called hyaluronidase. So
Okay.
so most of the fillers that people get are hyaluronic acid
Right.
fillers, whether it's Juvederm or Restylane or Belotero. They're hyaluronic acid fillers, which actually are long chain sugars, and very safe. And that's why people like them. But one of the main reasons people like them is they're reversible. So if you inject
Yes.
and you don't like the result, or God forbid you have a problem with that, you can
take it
inject hyaluronidase, which is the antidote, and dissolve it.
Dissolves it. Okay.
Now, I'm also on the international, I run an international symposium on complications related to HA, hyaluronic acid fillers.
Oh,
And
okay.
my big pet peeve is, just because there's the eraser, that doesn't just allow sloppy injections. So you say, oh, you know, if it doesn't work, we'll just get rid of
fix
it. Because that's a bad way to look at things.
Yeah, it is.
The best way to look at it is, I'm not going to get a problem. I'm going to do the best injection I possibly can, so I never have to use this eraser. But the eraser is available, which is great. The problem we're seeing with hyaluronic acid fillers, and boy, if you think neurotoxins have personalities, all of them
Those
are
are all
completely
different.
Juvederm's different than Restylane, different than Belotero, different than Voluma, different than Volura, Volbella. All of them are completely different. And you have to understand it, just like with the neurotoxins, understand the personality of that product to get the best results and avoid problems, and then take it a step further, know how to get rid of it, because they all dissolve differently with the same hyaluronidase. Some of them are very difficult to dissolve. One of the problems we started to talk about is under eye fillers, which has become an
Yeah.
epidemic. It's an epidemic of problems. Now, that's not to say that no one should get under eye fillers. I think there are a subset of patients that a young patient who's not ready for surgery.
Right.
A patient has already had too much surgery. Somebody who is just not interested in surgery. I think those patients are candidates for fillers. I'm a little biased because I'm an eye guy.
Eye surgeon,
and I think
yes.
the best long-term result for under eye shadows and bags is surgery.
Just take it
it's
out.
long-term. It lasts. You know what you're getting,
I tend to agree with you, but a lot of people are afraid of surgery.
and they are.
Not me.
But let me say that I see at least 2 or 3 patients each day in my office that have come to me to have their eye surgery, have their bags improved, have the appearance of the lower lids and upper lids improved, that have had fillers. And some of them have problems that cannot be fixed.
Because of the fillers.
Yes, because what
Okay.
happens is people see shadows. That's what they see, dark
Yeah.
circles. I have dark circles, I have shadows, what do I do? And since everybody can inject, you just mentioned it, whether it's a nurse, a PA, a dentist, a plastic surgeon, a dermatologist,
Possibly a psychiatrist.
a psychiatrist, honestly, family practice, OBGYN, everybody's in the business now. I get it. They're all doctors and healthcare providers, and they have the legal authority to
Yes.
inject. and there's all levels of talent. And some of them, even nurse injectors and so forth, are superb.
Yes.
So I'm not in the camp of saying you shouldn't do it because you're not qualified. I think you can be trained to do good, safe work. Anyone, if they have the talent. And so, because people have this problem of dark circles, which is so common. I mean, a lot of people complain about it. You know that. You see them. You're friends of ours.
Yeah. We all want to know what they can do about it.
And they want a simple solution, and they go to someone who doesn't do surgery, and the only option they have for them is fillers. So bad filler injections are being done routinely, and then the provider doesn't even know how to handle the problems.
So what happens? Does it pool up in there, or
so
why does it not work there, but it works in other areas
So the
of
reason
the
we
face?
get dark circles isn't because we lack hyaluronic acid.
Right.
It's not like we need this substance of injectable to replenish what we've lost, and that's why we have dark circles. Dark circles are typically shadows.
Yeah.
And they're shadows from contours because you typically have a bag. The light's typically from above, like in this room, hits the bag and creates a shadow. Because if you tilt your head back, the shadow almost always goes away.
Okay, so you're trying to fill in that hollow?
Sure, you fill the hollow, so the light now reflects off the hollow, and the dark circle gets improved. The problem is we're creating abnormal contours. People's lower lids are not convex.
Oh,
they're not convex.
Okay.
They're actually slightly concave. And when there's not a bag there, you restore that slight concavity, and then the light reflection is uniform. So you can create the improvement of light reflection by filling or contouring. And contouring, to me, with surgery, is the best option. Now, so everybody injects with all these different fillers, and most of these fillers, the way they work is they're hydrophilic. They bring water to the area. That's why they work so well for lips or other areas of the face. It's not the filling effect alone. It's the biologic effect after the filler's there, which is, we can talk about skin quality, which is a real great topic.
Yeah, we want to get to that in a minute here.
So
we got about 7 more minutes.
So everybody injects fillers, and most people, that water retention is a problem. If they have a pre-existing swollen lower lid, they're sunk. They get more swollen.
Okay.
And then so unfortunately, sometimes you go back to the person who injected you, and the solution is put more filler in. And that's like the worst thing you can do.
I can imagine where that would get.
Or they come back 6 months later after they did well the first time. Second time, it doesn't work as well. And that's what I'm seeing, again, the 2 to 3 patients a day in my office. They said, the first time was actually not bad. Second time, not so good. Third time, terrible. And some of the problems, that water retention, you can't fix. So I'm not a big fan of under-eye fillers because of that.
Okay, let's talk about skin quality, because that was very interesting to me. We talked about that a little bit in the green room. You were talking about injectables to improve the quality of your skin, not just to get rid of wrinkles.
Right. So you can do the greatest facelift, eye lift in the world. If the skin quality is poor, that's the envelope.
Right.
That's all you see. You can contour shape and all these things, 5 proportions, all things to make people look more proportioned. But if the skin doesn't look good, your picture is not complete.
Okay, how do we improve the skin?
Well, topicals, moisturizers work, but topicals in general don't penetrate the skin. So everybody talks about collagen, which is just an overused term.
Yeah.
Collagen is actually not that important.
People are even drinking it now.
I'm telling you, it does very little drinking it or ingesting it, tablets and all that. So collagen is a scar. Creating collagen is not necessarily what we want. We want to create elastin. We want to create things that make the skin more elastic and more like it used to be. What happens, people hate this analogy, but it's like the leather seats in your new car. In, out, and all of a sudden those nice plump seats have lots of folds and wrinkles in them. That's what happens to the face with movement. So the only way to fight that off is to improve and restore the lost substances, which is
so what
mostly
are you
elastin.
Injecting in there?
Several things. So we used to just fill everything. When you fill with fat, which is a great filler, but it's the ideal filler.
Do you do that too?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I leave it to somebody who does many more fat injections than me.
Okay.
But injections of most of these fillers that we've had over the past 15 years really just plump up. They're not really meant to be placed in the skin, even though they're classified by the FDA as dermal fillers. I did a study with Allergan, the biggest pharma company that's the maker of Botox, where injecting Juvederm diluted actually improves the upregulation, meaning creating new elastin and collagen. And that becomes ultimately important. So now all the pharma companies that have injectable products are trying to figure out how they can make these products that upregulate the body's ability to make new elastin, to make new collagen, which is not the only thing you need, to make new what we call ground substance, to make the skin soft, more hydrated, more elastic. And that's important. And again, most of the companies now have embraced that, and they realize skin quality is incredibly important.
We only got a couple of minutes here. So this is an injectable.
Injectable.
And can you use it on the whole body?
Well, it'll work anywhere where there's skin. The problem with most injectables in the body is it gets very expensive.
I was going to say, yeah.
The nice thing about the face,
like
with,
30.
You can wear clothes and cover some of the body things you don't like, but the face is there.
Right out there.
You wear makeup, but it doesn't really improve skin quality.
Yeah, and then what about the sun in Florida?
Right. So, so injectables for skin quality have become the mission of most of these companies to have one.
Anything good to prevent sun damage? You have anything other than just sunscreen?
I'm not a big sunscreen fan, interestingly, because I have my own feeling about what sunscreen long term does. We and unfortunately, like the eraser for hyaluronic acid, people overexpose themselves in the sun, assuming they're protected with sunscreen, and they get overexposed in a way that the sunscreen doesn't always completely protect them. Zinc oxide's the ultimate because it's complete opaque, it's white, it's actually a bit of a moisturizer. But of course, if you're going to be in the sun, sunscreen makes a lot of sense. But again, don't overexpose yourself because that will defeat it.
Yeah, you're wearing the sunscreen. Okay. All right, we got to go.
Well, thank you, Becky.
Again, Dr. Fagan.
Always
it was very interesting. Touched on a lot. We got some stuff we didn't even get to, but we'll get to it next time. I'll have you back.
You bet.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. See you next week. You have been watching and listening to The Becky and Boca Show. Tune in every Thursday night at 6 p.m. to discover all the ways to spoil yourself and have a good time in beautiful Boca Raton. See you next week.
The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.